Hi everybody, I just want to give you a very quick encouragement from Luke chapter 14. Chapter 14 doesn't always end at the end of chapter 14, and chapter 15 is not always a new subject. So I believe, personally, through looking at this, that there's a large part of Luke that should be read all in one go, where Luke is making one point about something Jesus said and using several different illustrations from Jesus' life to make this point about what Jesus meant. I want us to jump in at Luke 14:25 because I want to tell you what I think the point is, and it just might encourage you in counting your cost of discipleship. It says, large crowds were travelling with Jesus, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me but loves his father, mother, wife, children, brothers and sisters, or even life more than me, he cannot be my follower. Whoever is not willing to carry his cross and follow me cannot be my follower. If you want to build a tower, you first sit down and decide how much it will cost to see if you have enough money to finish the job. If you don't, you might lay the foundation, but you would not be able to finish. Then all who would see it would make fun of you, saying, this person began to build, but was not able to finish. If a king is going to fight another king, first he will sit down and plan. He will decide if he and his 10,000 soldiers can defeat the other king, who have 20,000 soldiers. If he can't, then while the king is still far away, he will send for some people to speak to him and ask him for peace. In the same way, you must give up everything if you want to be my follower. Now, this is what I want to say. So often, I have heard it preached, you have to count the cost of being a disciple. Count what you have to give up. And clearly here, Jesus says you're going to have to give some things up. In another video, I'd like to take us through all the things that Jesus has said previous and the things he says afterwards to show this point even more. But this video is meant to be short, so let me just make the point. Okay. Jesus says, if you love father, mother, wife, children, brothers, or even your life more than me, you cannot be my follower. Then he talks about taking up your cross and carrying him. Then he talks about a man who's going to build a tower. And we have took from that verse, Jesus saying you've got to count the cost. But that was a metaphor. And I always teach my students that behind every metaphor there's a message, and quite often we take the metaphor and make that the message, but actually we're meant to be finding the message behind the metaphor. So he says the man would sit down and count up how much he had, not how much he didn't have. Does he have enough to build the temple or to build the tower? Then the soldiers are going to fight the other army, and the man sits down and he counts and considers how much he has so he can win against the other man. If he doesn't have enough, he'll make peace. Then Jesus says, in the same way, you must give up everything you have to be my follower. But the two men in the metaphors counted up not what they don't have, not what they had to give away, but how much they did have. Do I have enough money? Do I have enough men? So Jesus is saying, do you have enough love? Counting the cost is counting how much love I have. It's not so much that I'm going to have to lose these people, it's that I'm going to have to love him more than these people. Now, very often, we think Jesus is going to say, okay, so you have to leave all your family, and sometimes he does. But I've never read a book, an autobiography anyway, by a missionary who said, he told me to leave them and I was so devastated for the rest of my life. They get so taken up with what they've got to do. That's their purpose in life. And when we fulfill our purpose, we're happy. We're joyful. And so basically, God is a God of love. The very law, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbour as yourself, is built on love. Jesus said if you fulfill those two commandments, you fulfill the whole of the law, because the other commandments were made so we could fulfill those two. So he wants us to love our families, and he wants us to love our neighbours, and he wants us to love all of these things. But do I love him more? I must count up if I have enough love for him. And an encouragement for you today is this: love is a fruit of the Holy Spirit. We get it by walking with the Holy Spirit. Love is a gift of the Spirit. We get it by walking with God, because God is love. 1 John verse 4 says God is Spirit and God is love. So I can walk with the Spirit to get love. I can walk with the Spirit to get love. Let me say it one more time. I can walk with the Spirit to get love. Count up how much love for him you have. And if you don't have enough to keep following him and not looking back, ask him for more. Lord, fill me with love. Fill me with love for you. Let me fall in love with you. Let me fall in love with you. And then when you come to a decision that is either them or him, You'll choose him. And it can be hard, but he doesn't always give it. Quite often it's actually a decision, will you love them or not love them? And sometimes we have to love him more and choose to love them than choose ourselves in a situation, because God will always have us obey love, because God is love. But sometimes we come up against a situation where God is telling us to love and we don't want to love, and we have to love him the most and choose to love. So in other words, if my mother says, well, I don't want you to speak to that person anymore, but my God says, well, I do want you to speak to that person, I choose to obey him because I love him more. Love is a fruit of the Holy Spirit. How do we get it? By getting alone with him. He will change our heart of stone into a heart of flesh. He will write the laws of God on our hearts. Be blessed today. Get alone with God. Seek him. God bless.